Hello, good evening. It is Friday night. I would normally be doing a circle tonight, but I decided not to do my circle tonight, playing hooky from circle, although really not very many people have been attending, so it doesn't seem like I'm bailing on too much. Tonight we're going to be reading chapter 4. Last night we read about civilizations, and that was really quite fascinating. And one of the things that I'm just going to say before I start is so much of my own personal journey of awakening has been through hearing these stories. And from childhood, I remember hearing history being taught, and in my mind, it was as though I was hearing a different story. And so throughout my life, this has occurred when I read biblical works or other religious texts or ancient myths or stories. It's almost as though there was always a meter within me of truth, and I could tell when I was hearing the words of man versus the channeled words of God or the channeled words of the angelics. And I didn't think of them in terms of angelics in those days. I didn't even think in terms of any of that. It just felt like truth to me. So it's fascinating reading this book, and I'm really enjoying it, and I hope you are too. Um, there are some of you who are sticking with me through it, and that's awesome. And some of you who are just discovering us. And, I believe it's through story that we can learn the most, because when we listen to someone else's story, we automatically insert ourselves in it as the lead character, and we play it out as though it were our own. And it gives us an opportunity to adventure in a story different from our own, which increases our capacity to learn because we're experiencing something else. And that's where we learn, right? So I love reading stories. Okay, here we go. Chapter 4. Survival, Cooperation, and New Beginnings. Again, we're reading out of Return of the Bird Tribes by Ken Carey, and this is chapter 4. If you are joining us later in my reading and you haven't heard the previous chapters and introduction, they're also on my YouTube channel, where you can search my videos for story time. Okay. Chapter 4, Survival, Cooperation, and New Beginnings. Just as distinct little beings, I'm sorry, I wrote that too. When I first wrote this out, I wrote New Beginnings. It's actually New Beings. Survival, Cooperation, and New Beings. Okay, here we go. Just as distinct little beings work together to produce each complete human cell, there are spirit beings designed to work in symbiotic cooperation with each human ego. There are many names for us. We have been called angels, bird tribes, higher selves, hoaxedas, not sure, spirits of the stars. The reality of what we are is more than a name can convey. We are the multiple projections of the Eternal One, spirits designed to blend with present-day humans. You now consider yourselves to be your egos, but egos are only one half of the human equation. The complete human is a spirit-ego partner. Spirit-ego partnership. We are individualized aspects of one holy and eternal being. We are your spirits as they exist apart from the spell of matter. We do not evolve. We incarnate. Our intelligence is pre-existent. Our identities, highly focused frequencies of starlight. You need us to be whole, just as we need you to fully enter the physical plane. We seek to awaken your bodies, your minds, and hearts so that we can incarnate into your bodies. We are here to return your human circuitry to its creator. Yet your human egos are the guardians of this circuitry, the stewards of your minds and hearts. And without your ego's cooperation, our bonding with you is impossible. You ego-ruled humans who feud and fight among yourselves do not seem to realize the obvious, the very values that you employ to determine your social behavior would, if employed by your body parts, effectively block any cooperative association of ribosomes, enzymes, mitochondria, and other little life forms that from providing you with even a single coherent cell, to say nothing of a healthy and intelligent human body. Hundreds of thousands of little beings all work voluntarily together, making a human body what it is. It is not a case of survival of the fittest, as your belief systems, based on short-term observation, proclaim. It is rather a case of flourishment of the most cooperative, as all long-term observation of the universe verifies. It is through cooperation with one another that diverse forms of life adapt and thrive. And it is only through the symbolic cooperation of a multitude of simpler organisms that more complex organisms like your bodies are able to come into existence at all. In my Life Mastery program, I teach you that your body is a collective of flora, fauna, and human cells that are all agreeing to work together, hold together, assigning jobs, tasks, and holding space for things, doing processes, safeguarding and protecting us, helping us digest things and move things off, fighting infections. All of that is a collective community that has agreed to do this. And they hold together, and that creates the conversation of these cells talking to one another in a vibrational exchange, which is part of what makes our bodies vibrational beings, right? The soup of the conversation. That's why it's a mind-body-spirit complex. It's the relationship between ourselves and these organisms that allows our body to be at its highest of functioning and of representation of what our souls came here to be and do. Pretty powerful stuff when you start thinking about it that way. Back to the reading. At critical stages in their development, life forms cooperate for their own advantage with other separate and distinct life forms. Over time, their cooperation results in union. A new organism comes into being. Again and again, this occurs in the formation of complex life forms. This is analogous to what is about to happen again as your late 20th century human world reaches this optimal moment for materially oriented, ego-ruled human beings to be joined by their spirit world counterparts. Your race is soon to experience widespread awakenings, or, some will see it, a massive descent of beings from the stars. We are the dreams of the Great Spirit, the true dreams, the clear dreams, the pure dreams, never tainted by fear, never touched by any motivation other than the motivation of love. And yet we are dreams nonetheless, thoughts, disincarnate beings, drifting formless through a universe that has placed the highest value on form. Living in the consciousness of a creator whose desire is to take form in the very creature that will result from our bonding with you. Our spiritual intelligence is the missing dimension, the rejected aspect of your own wholeness. For thousands of years, you have been afraid of us. Many of you are now learning that you have nothing to lose and everything to gain by establishing contact with us once again. It is only your ego that makes you fear. Your ego is here to look after your physical body, to make sure it gets enough to eat, to make sure it does not walk over the edge of a cliff or damage itself unknowingly. Your ego is the steward and potential master of all material plane fears, an important and necessary component of your identity. However, your ego was never meant to provide you with your primary sense of self. In a healthy state, the ego is a secondary component of identity. In a healthy state, the being behind all being, the self behind every self, the great spirit behind all of creation is experienced as your primary sense of self. Your ego does not have to be repressed or transcended for this to happen. It does not have to die. It simply has to assume an appropriate relationship with the spirit that in truth you are. The spirit that wants to incarnate and take up residence in your mind, body, heart system. Your ego is by nature a reflection. It can either be a good, sharp, clear reflection, or it can try to be an independent reflection. Yet logic shows that there is no such thing as an independent reflection. Your ego may create such an illusion, but if you believe in it, you will be troubled and unfulfilled. When your ego stops trying to do everything all by itself and invites eternal spirit into your consciousness, your historical illusions evaporates and like mist on a sunny morning. A polarity reversal takes place in the charge of your human envelope. The field of consciousness around you changes. Instead of your ego dominating your sense of identity and blocking your awareness of the Great Spirit, an eternal sense of self awakens within you. You know yourself as a projection of the Creator of all the stars in the sky. You know yourself as one of a family of God beings sharing God's being. You remember. Everything is seen differently. The world is perceived anew through the eyes of a universal awareness. Your ego becomes your working partner, and you commence the conscious creation of a new human reality. I can attest to this. This is exactly what happens when we surrender to our own authorship and we begin witnessing our life for the perfection, the training, the breaking out of limiting beliefs, the deconstruction of archaic karma inherited through generation after generation of beings separated from themselves. When you shuck that by surrendering, you can't help but change your orientation and polarity. Life begins to unfold. And all that didn't work, that was supporting that negative polarity orientation or the victimhood identity or the externalization of your persona complex onto others, it just washes away. Doesn't matter anymore. It's an amazing experience. I love these confirmations. Sorry, I know I keep breaking away. We bring you to an angelic awareness that historically has not often been incarnated in human form. We bring an eternal continuity of consciousness that henceforth you might know yourselves as we know ourselves. Together, in the loving cooperation, we join to provide spirit and matter with the optimal balance. We are not here to dominate your ego, but to secure its agreement. That between us, we might work together. And ultimately, as the years of this transition pass, merge into a single biological, spiritual, and psychological entity. An entity that shall in no way deny the needs and concerns of either ego or spirit, but that shall in every way honor the fulfillment and the fundamental design and purpose of both. We understand love and how it seeks to become objectified in a material universe. Your human egos understand the mechanics of the physical plane, and together we will form a single creative dyad, an entry point into which the Eternal One's universal creativity will pour, and from there flow out, thoroughly transforming those realms of matter. That's why the secondary class is called Let It Flow. We're coming now to help you make the shift from unconscious creature worlds of biology to conscious co-creative biology. We're here to make this great time of change as gentle as possible on our purpose. Our purpose is to blend with your race, to bring you into harmony with the Creator and with the earth, to create a world that works for everyone, a world that allows for optimal development of all creative potential. Many human beings are already consciously blending with us. However, human hearts are willing to honor the spirit of love. Whatever human hearts are willing to honor the spirit of love, we descend and we incarnate. We complete the human creation. During the age when fear was enthroned as the God at the source of human motivation, our incarnations only rarely occurred. Most of us, your symbolic counterparts, the missing pieces that are needed to make you fully human, flew to the gentler, non-physical realms of higher vibration, fluttering away as birds might fly, startled at the thrashing of some loud and ignorant creature, only now to return, to approach you again, under more favorable conditions. But even during the darkest times, those of one particular light circle, my own, would fly close, to influence, to inspire, to blend where we could. You've heard rumors of our presence, teachers, healers, wise ones, here and there. Listen now, you of this present world, to the tale of one who walked upon your plains. Since that was so short, I'm thinking about just going ahead and reading chapter 5. I'm going to do it. So if you want to stay with me for chapter 5, feel free. It's White Buffalo Calf Woman, which is one of my favorite guides. And she came to me about 5 years ago, honestly, in the clearest way. And before that, I didn't know who she was. And she's been a great spirit in my life. So I'm going to read chapter 5. You can sign off and listen to this part later, or keep on listening with me. She came from the stars. Too many tribes she came, though each knew her by a different name. You might see her now as two young Sioux hunters first saw her walking barefoot, like a vision, across the low rolling hills of the prairie. They'd climbed to the top of one such hill looking for game, for some sign of movement in the broad rolling sea of grasses. Far away they saw a dot upon the horizon. They watched it carefully. By the time it disappeared behind the hill before them, they were almost certain it was human. With bated breath they waited. At last, upon the crest of the hill, a young woman appeared wearing a beautiful white buckskin dress, decorated with dark porcupine quills. At her side she carried a skin pouch, an eagle feather woven into her long, braided black hair caught the light of the early afternoon. Remarking upon her extraordinary beauty, the first of the warrior braves exclaimed how he would like to couple with her there in the sun-warmed prairie grass. "Put aside such thoughts," spoke the other brave. "This is a sacred woman. A vision, perhaps, certainly not one to be approached in that manner." But to his surprise, the woman in white buckskin smiled at the last lusty warrior and said to him, "Come to me. You shall have what you desire." And so the second brave was left standing alone on the prairie, watching as his brother walked off, apparently enjoying the mysterious woman in the swirling cloud of dust, that for a while hid them both from sight. When the dust had settled enough to see, there was the woman bringing slowly together the stitches of her dress. At her feet, partially decomposed, lay a corpse, alive but with worms, beetles, and a cloud of hungry flies. Then White Buffalo Calf Woman, who was the form in which the Great Spirit had come to teach the people of the plains, spoke to the young brave, who now remained alone, and said, "A man who looks first to a woman's outer beauty will upon his eyes, will never know her beauty divine." I'm going to read that again. "A man who looks first to a woman's outer beauty will never know her beauty divine, for there is dust upon his eyes, and he is as good as blind. But a man who sees in a woman the spirit of the Great One, and who sees her beauty first in spirit and in truth, that man will know God in that woman. And should she choose to lie with him, he will share with her in enjoyment more fully than the former ever could. And all will be as it should be. You, when you looked upon me, were not blind to my beauty, but your first thoughts were, who is she, this beautiful woman? What is it that makes her countenance glow so in the afternoon sun? What thoughts are those that dance behind her eyes? From what land does she come? With what tidings? And so, my young friend, have no fear. You too shall have what you desire. You and your friend symbolize two paths that the men of the tribe can take. If you seek first a sacred vision of the Great Spirit, you will see as the Creator sees. And in that seeing you will find that what you need from the earth will come readily to your hands. But if you seek first to secure your earthly desires and forget the Spirit, you will die inside. In olden days, most of the men took your path, but in this age, many men are now going the path of your fallen brother. What you saw in the cloud was a speeded up lifetime. Your brother lived many years in those moments while you saw only a swirl of dust. It was not so bad for him as you might imagine. He lived a life that many in this forgotten and forgetful age would even say was a good one. But he was ruled ever by his passions, and in the end his body turned to dust. For all his thoughts were but his own were dust. He had forgotten not only the Great Spirit, but his own spirit as well. He contributed nothing of meaning to me, to womankind, or to the people of the plains. Then the young hunter asked the woman who she was. With eyes black as the midnight pools between the stars, she looked steadily at him for a moment, as if her gaze alone gave obvious answer. "I am the spirit of truth," she replied at last. "Your people know me as the mother of the old ones, but as you can see for yourself, I'm not so old as all of that. I am no older than any stalk of grass waving in the wind, or any prairie flower. I am the Great Mother who lives inside every mother, the girl who plays in every sister child. I am the face of the Great Spirit your people have forgotten. I have come to take to the nations of the plains. I've come to talk to the nations of the plains. Go before me to your village and tell your chief to prepare a generous teepee that will accommodate all the people of your camp. I will be there shortly. I have some things to teach you, sacred things that your tribe has forgotten." In awe and excitement, the young hunter ran back to his people and told his chief of all he had seen. Now the chief of this young man's tribe was named Standing Hollowhorn, a name that no chief would have had in healthier days, for it well symbolized the hollowness and bravado that by this time had come to typify all too many men of the plains. Yet Standing Hollowhorn was not a thoughtless or an evil man. After hearing the young man's tale, he set to work along with others to build a great tepee of many skins in which the people of the camp could gather, for the weather that early in the year was often wild and stormy in the evenings, and Standing Hollowhorn would not have the people distracted from the teachings of one whom he suspected might well be the Mother of Stars. When the people saw White Buffalo Calf Woman approaching them across the prairie, they were amazed. They were expecting one of greater years, yet she appeared no older than a maiden. As graceful as the grasses that waved around her in the twilight, her face glowed with a radiance that spoke of wild flowers, watercress, and the finest of herbs. As she walked through the center of the village, many a warrior had first thoughts like those of their fallen brothers. But they had heard by now the story of his fate, and they practiced a discipline of thought that to some of them was new. Barefoot as she walked always upon the earth and in her travels, White Buffalo Calf Woman entered the tepee of many skins, her white buckskin dress radiating the presence of her spirit. Without speaking a word, she walked slowly in a circle around the fire that burned in the center of the tepee. As each of her sun-browned feet touched the sand, all who watched felt her prayerful reverence for the earth. 7 times, slowly and in silence, she walked around the fire. Few could look into her eyes. Those who dared saw pools of perfect blackness. So large were her pupils that those who looked into them could see the mirror of her face and the reflected flickering of the council fire. And they felt that they were looking at themselves, seeing themselves as they truly were, not exaggerating their strengths nor ignoring their feelings, but as they were, naked and revealed. Those who could not, with honesty, look into the eyes of White Buffalo Calf Woman did not look at all. Even before she opened her mouth to speak, her bearing and example had given the people of the Sioux the greatest teachings those present had ever received. When she spoke at last, her voice was like the song of waters singing upon the rocks, like the song of prairie birds calling above the meadows. It reminded those who heard it of the wind that whispered around their teepees at night and whistled through the branches of the mountain pines. 7 times, she said, I have circled this fire in reverence and in silence. This fire symbolizes the love that burns forever in the heart of the Great Spirit. It is the fire that warms the heart of every buffalo calf, every prairie dog, every sage hen, every eagle, and every human being. This teepee of many skins is your body. This fire that burns at your center is your love. The fire of your love is at times expressed sexually. Here she paused and looked deeply into the eyes of those around her. There is a creative as well as a destructive way for this to occur. Passion that roars out of control is like a wild grass fire that destroys everything in its path. But tempered with wisdom, that same passion can fuel whole generations. It can warm 1,000 lodges through 100 snowy winters and give its power to your children and to your children's young. Those like the young man whose bones now lie beneath the prairie moon, who think first of the sexual expressions of this fire, and only second, if they think at all, of the spirit behind it, lock themselves into cycles of suffering and illusion. Cycles that were unknown among our own people a few short centuries ago, but which now are debilitating your nation, weakening your vanity and draining away your power. Creation does not take place where there is a scattering and dissipation of energies. Creation requires a gathering together and focusing of your power within a circle of commitment. Like a seed, an egg, a womb, or a marriage. If you would create and not destroy, you must remember always the sacred hoop. Consider wisely the ways in which you would use your power, and then around those ways draw the sacred circle of commitment. In the warm atmosphere of that circle, the power of love builds and builds like a storm above the wet summer prairie, until suddenly the circle can hold no more and explodes in the conception of the new. This fire is more powerful than any one of you, White Buffalo Calf Woman said, pointing as she did to the flames dancing in the teepee center. And the 7 sacred circles I have walked around it represent the 7 worlds that it has created. You live in all 7 of those worlds, but you are conscious only of one, the physical, the external. You have forgotten the inner worlds, the worlds of vision, the world from which I come and in which my kind lives. I am dressed like you, people of the plains, but my tribe is not Sioux. She paused a moment and slowly bent forward to pull a burning branch from the flames. My tribe is the bird tribe, she stated quietly. I am one of the bird people, whose tribe once covered the island of the turtle. Do you remember the winged ones of heaven? The firebirds, the thunder tribes. How long has it been since you called us into your council? She walked once slowly around the fire, holding up the burning branch and looking searchingly into their faces for an answer. All eyes turned to the storytellers. The storytellers were silent. Your people have forgotten, White Buffalo Calf Woman continued, that which is more precious than water. You have forgotten your connection with Great Spirit. I have come, she said, holding the burning branch above her, with a fire from heaven to kindle again your memory of what has been, and to strengthen you for the times to come. She then placed the branch back into the fire and took from her side a skin pouch she carried. Many only now noticed this pouch for the first time. They were amazed at the beautiful beadwork and porcupine quills designed on its surface. "In this pouch," she said, "is a pipe. This pipe is sacred. I give it to you to help you remember the teachings that I bring. Always treat this pipe with respect. Carry it and the other things you may make after its fashion only in bags of the finest skin, decorated by only the most reverent of hands." Not yet opening the skin pouch that contained the pipe, but placing it reverently near the fire and occasionally gesturing toward it, White Buffalo Calf Woman explained the use of the pipe. "Fill this pipe with a sacred tobacco grown especially for this purpose. Draw your first breath of smoke from this pipe as a breath of gratitude to the Great Spirit, from whose breath you were first given life. Use the smoke of this pipe to represent your thoughts, prayers, and aspirations. Send them upward with your exaltations to the Great One, Wakantanka, Grandfather of all. Each time you do this, pass the pipe slowly and reverently among those who may be gathered with you, while each offers his first inhalation to the Great One above this world. Then, with your second breath of the sacred tobacco, let your thoughts be of love and gratitude to your mother, the earth. Give thanks for the grasses that clothe her breasts and prairies of flowing grain. Give thanks for the canopy of blue sky that she holds for you as a world in which to live. Give thanks for the storm clouds that bring rain to the prairies, filling creeks with water, and water holes and springs and ponds. With reverence, pass the pipe around the circle, while each one takes a second breath of the sacred smoke and does the same. Let your third breath be for the four-footed and the feathered ones, for the buffalo and the prairie chickens, for the fishes in your rivers, and all the creatures of this earth. And let your fourth be for the Ongwihonwe. Let your prayer be that your tribe will always remain among them, and that one day the people who remain true to reality will include all the nations of the world. All this time she had not yet opened the pouch in which she held the pipe. Now she slowly untied the leather thongs that bound it and lifted a corner, reached within to pull from the white skin pouch a pipe of red stone. The manner in which she raised this pipe for all to see spoke of such reverence that all within the great teepee grew still. Many in that moment found their hearts full, tears glistening in many eyes. "This sacred pipe," spoke White Buffalo Calf Woman, "and every breath of sacred smoke you breathe through its stem will help you remember that every breath you take is sacred. The bowl of the pipe is made of red stone. It is in this shape of the pipe is made. The bowl of the pipe is made of red stone. It is in the shape of a circle. It symbolizes the sacred hoop, the sacred circle of giving and receiving, of in-breathing and out-breathing, in which all living things come to life through the power of the Great One." Asking for some tobacco, White Buffalo Calf Woman filled the pipe, saying, "This tobacco, I know, was grown in your most fertile soil and given your most special care. It symbolizes the plant world, the moss upon the stones, the flowers, the herbs, the leaves of grass that cover the hillside, lest your mother lie naked in the sun. You, my people of the Sioux, are here to care for the earth. Your life is lit from the same fire that burns in the heart of the Great Spirit. Wakantanka." So saying, she struck a small twig into the fire, and it burned brightly. Just as a light, this individual twig from the great fire that burns in the center of this teepee So each individual human being is a flame taken from the eternal fire of God's love. Slowly she moved the flaming twig away from the central fire and held it up for all to see. This is your individual human life. Like the single flame that burns upon this twig is sufficient to light a great fire. As long as the love that burns within you is turned towards self-centered pursuits, it will remain tiny like this flame. Remaining tiny, it will bring you no joy. Eventually, in the swirling winds of spirit, it will be extinguished. But when you live in harmony with the Great Spirit, your flame of love is fanned by those same spirit winds. You are in love with the very purpose of life. You light the fire of love in all you meet. You know the purpose of your walk through this world, and you know why the Great One gave you a life flame, not so that you could keep your tiny flame to yourself, loving what you needed alone, but so that you could give it away, and with the fire of your love bring consciousness to the earth. So saying, she held the burning twig until the flame just above the red bowl of the pipe. To the pipe's center she touched the flame, inhaling softly through the stem until the tobacco glowed brightly. The first wafts of the sacred smoke drifted through the room. It was as if those present were seeing a pipe lit for the first time. Just as the tobacco burns within this pipe of earth represents the plant kingdom, continued White Buffalo Calf Woman, so this buffalo you see carved on the stone bowl of the pipe represents the four-legged creatures that share with you this sacred world. Etenoa. Not sure. These 12 feathers hanging from the stem of the pipe have come from Wambly Gelshka, the spotted eagle. They are to remind you of the great feathered races with whom you share the great circle of the sky. But they are also to remind you of your spirit selves, the bird tribes, the winged ones of heaven. As I now pass this pipe to you and give thanks to the Great Spirit with your first breath of tobacco, let these feathers remind you of the spirit beings who come from the stars to brighten your human lives. Let these 12 sacred feathers draw your thoughts up and away from the gravity of petty and jealous passions. Let your thoughts fly like those feathers have once flown on Wambly Gelshka, high above the world of the little self. Take this pipe, give your thanks to the Great Spirit, and pass the pipe to the others in our circle. Let your thoughts be lifted up to the Great One, who comes now to stir your memories and to open the eyes of your storytellers. Every dawn that dawns red in your eastern sky, like the red bowl of this pipe, is the birth of a new and holy day. And just as the rising sun drives out the darkness, so the light that shines in the lives of all those who love drives out the darkness of self-centeredness and dissolves the shadows that cause misfortune. Remember always to treat every creature as a sacred being. The people that live beyond the mountains, the winged ones of the air, the four-footed, the fishes that hide beneath the cool rocks and silver streams and lakes, all those are your sisters and your brothers. All are sacred parts of the body of the Great Spirit. Each one is holy. The most difficult part in this teaching may be to extend this respect to the people of your neighboring tribes. Remember, like you, they are sacred people, given a specific work to do in the great being of Wakantanka. Their work is not your own. Their tasks differ from yours. But the purpose you serve is the same. The sun that shines upon you does not see you as being so very different. In peace you must live side by side with those who are a different shade of the color you wear. For a people are coming soon who do not share the color of your skin, but who are white like the snow that falls in the winter months. And with them will also come those of black skin, and those of yellow skin, and those of every color between. Just as the colors blend together in rainbows that arch across the prairie when the storm is past, so you must tell the white races, the black races, the yellow ones, and all the red that come through, you may be of red skin. You are first and foremost of the people of the Great Spirit. Through peaceful blending with your neighboring tribes, be an inspiration to the wandering people. Help lead all the races into the harmony of the rainbow. And then the pipe was passed, and she was silent until all those present had taken their first smoke. A second time the pipe was passed in reverence for the earth, and a third for the four-footed and the winged. A fourth time the pipe was passed in reverence for the many tribes of humankind, those in the distant past, those living now, and those yet to be. After all gathered around in the great teepee had completed their fourth smoke, White Buffalo Calf Woman raised the pipe reverently before her for all to see. Carry your pipe with you always. Treat it as a sacred object. Honor all creatures and live your life in harmony with the sacred way of balance, of which every tree, every flower, and every new day speaks. There will be many seasons when your heart will feel clear and pure as the mountain spring, and you will know the peace and the joy of the Great Spirit. But should ever your step falter, now or in the more troubled times to come, if ever you feel that you have stepped aside from the path of the sacred way, if ever your heart should feel heavy within you, do not waste time in regret. I will give you a ceremony, she said, filling the pipe once more and relighting it from the sacred fire. A ceremony which each of you can do in company with others, alone in your lodge or out on the prairie. Some of your activities stop your activities, find a rock upon which to sit, asking for the Great Spirit's guidance as I have taught you. Unwrap your pipe and let its red bowl remind you of the sacred road, the way of life, the red path of the sun. After you have smoked your smokes into the Great Spirit, to the earth, and to the animals, and to the people who are true to reality, after you have given your thanks to the four directions, then take a fifth smoke, asking for the guidance of the great winged beings of the spirit world. Ask the particular winged being of the spirit world that is closest to you to help you see the wisest path to follow. Ask the Spirit to help you make the clearest choice, to help you know the steps you are to take upon the path of your deepest knowing would have you travel. In time you will come to know that the Spirit being as your own true self. For now, just rest in the still place where the deepest knowing makes its lodge. This will put you in touch with what you may have forgotten in the hurry of life. This will allow the fire that burns within you to speak to you in plain and unbroken terms. With this fifth smoke, the smoke that you offer to the invisible spirit that guides you, you will see that the spirit world is real, inhabited by wise and benevolent beings that watch over your trials and hardships, unable to offer you help or assistance until you ask them. With this smoke, ask the spirit beings that surrender you to come into your life, that surround you to come into your life. Tell them you want to help them and the Great Spirit in their work and ask them how you can do this. By helping the Great Spirit in his work, you will help yourself far more than if you were merely concerned with your own affairs. Human beings are not fully happy or healthy until they serve the purpose for which God created them. Offer your sixth smoke to the 6 people whom you would most like to see, especially blessed, a loved one whose spirit has flown from his body, a young man or woman who will soon be entering adulthood, the leader of a neighboring tribe whom you would like to see deepen in the ways of wisdom, perhaps your own grandfathers, grandmothers, or families. Each time you do this, choose the 6 people whom you would most like God to smile upon. For them, offer this smoke. She then explained how the 6th smoke could be taken in 6 smaller smokes, one for each of the people involved. While the pipe was being slowly passed, she drew circles in the sand to represent the souls of each of these 6 people. Then, around them all, she drew one great circle to represent the blessings. When all present had completed their 6th smoke, White Buffalo Calf Woman turned slowly to look at each one in turn. All within the teepee grew very still. Even the outside breezes came to rest atop the poles. The teepee flaps hung motionless. The 7th smoke, she explained, must always be taken in silence. For it was offered to the great being from which every being was drawn. For that sacred mystery at the source of life, it was better, she said, to have no words. After the 7th smoke was completed, such a unity was felt by those present in the great teepee of many skins, it seemed to the moment as if there was but one present. In perfect stillness, the silence spread like warm water, dissolving the last traces of disharmony from the heart of the Sioux. For many moments, White Buffalo Calf Woman was silent. When she spoke again, she compared her teaching to a tree that would flower in their understanding as they took these things to heart and applied them in their daily living. She told the Sioux how their individual human lives were like the individual leaves of a tree, and how no tree has leaves so foolish as to fight among themselves. No people true to reality would be so blind, she said, as to let the individuals within their tribe contend with one another. Remember, there is no cause that justifies violence against another human being, save only in the last resort to protect yourself or your family. For a long time, she continued, you will live beneath the sacred shade of this tree of understanding that I am planting in your consciousness this evening. And in the generations immediately following yours, the people of the Sioux will be united again in the sacred circle. Be true to that circle, my women of the buffalo, my braves, my people of the plains. Be true to these ways and hold steadfast in this truth, for a time will come like a dark storm from the east, when the prairies shall be overrun with those who speak fast, perceive little, and wield too much power. The sacred tree of understanding that you will carry within you, turning these next few generations, will be cut down in that storm. The trees will seem to die. The sacred hoop will wither until it is all but forgotten. A few will keep the light of truth burning within their hearts, but the light will grow dim and become, even in those, but a tiny ember. But that ember will remain. Quietly, it will remain. All but forgotten, it will hold still a small glow in the hearts of the gentle ones. Even when a strange and hurried nation covers these prairies, even when your Mother Earth is brought, sold, and stolen as if she were no more than a handful of beads, even when roaring ships and magic stone fly, with people in them across the skies, that ember will hold still its tiny glow. And know this, my people, a great fire can be ignited from a single glowing ember. For when the storm is over, that ember will ignite a dawn brighter than any dawn before. A new tree will grow, more glorious than this tree I leave with you now. With that new dawn, I will return. Under the shade of that new tree, I will live with you. And with us will be the gathered, not only the tribes shaded red, but the white tribes from the north, and the black tribes from the south, and the yellow tribes from the east, and the brown from the west. In harmony with 4 races will live beneath the boughs of the new trees. The age that we will see together will be the best that has ever been. All that has been broken will be made whole. The sacred hoop will be mended. The game will be plentiful, and the spirits of all creatures will rejoice in the harmony of a new and perfect world. The Great Spirit, the very thunderbird, will be active within the races, living, breathing, creating through the peoples of the earth. Peace will come to the nations, and the original creatures of life, the winged ones of heaven, will return. That's powerful. When I was early in my own personal journey of my training and stepping into my own priestesshood in my life and having to make changes in my life because they were out of alignment with what my spirit self was telling me was true, before I'd built life mastery, before any of those things, I remember I had a woman come to me. She approached me and she said, so I've been working on healing myself and I'm being taught by an angel. And they said that I need to call you and talk to you. And I told them that you already talked to the angels and I don't know why I need to talk to you. And I kind of laughed and I said, well, I don't really know about angels, because I hadn't really yet accepted this label for what I was talking to. I wasn't accepting it when I was being told that's what I was. And I think many of you can relate to that. There was an egoic struggle of who am I to say I'm an angel incarnated here on earth? Who am I to say that I'm here to do God's work? Well, the question they kept saying was, who are you not? So during that time, she told me, we did a meditation together, and she told me, she said, the angels are telling you, they're reminding you to use the tree. It's the tree meditation that can support people the most in being able to connect to the great spirit of all things. Because the tree is connected as an individual to its entire forest. Through its connections, it knows how to support itself. It knows how to support the forest. And you need to learn and remember the forest while being the self. And it was a powerful lesson. This was a powerful confirmation of that. Thanks for hanging with me. I know we covered 2 chapters. I'll see you on Monday, where we'll cover chapter 6, The Great Peacemaker. I hope you have a great weekend. Happy quarantine.